Peace and Pan-Africanism, brothers and sisters. 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 This is the Prince of Pan-Africanism, the notorious RBG, Dr.UMAR Ifatunde. I am coming to you live and direct on the 204th solar return of the greatest black leader to ever walk on American soil. That would be none other than the immortal, the incomparable, the great Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey Jr. The Honorable Frederick Douglass was born today, February the 14th, 1818, 204 years ago. He was born during the year of the tiger. I am a 4 times great-grand cousin to the Honorable Frederick Douglass. I also was born during the year of the tiger in honor of Frederick Douglass, the great leader, the great abolitionist, the great station master of the Underground Railroad, the great orator, the great debater, the great political strategist, Frederick Douglass. I have decided that I should read in his honor today his No Struggle, No Progress speech, and to provide a contemporary 21st century political assessment and analysis of the words of the great ancestor. I am not going to read the entire speech, but I am going to read all the points of the speech that I believe are relevant to us as American Africans today and Africans around the world. I believe that Frederick Douglass's "If there is no struggle, there is no progress" speech may very well be the greatest speech ever written by a black leader in American history. We should know Frederick Douglass for many reasons. I can't get into all of them here, but I will give you some. As we celebrate the 204th birthday of the great Frederick Douglass, we should remember that this man was the first black man to run away from slavery and write an autobiography about his slave experience, while honestly and forthrightly revealing his identity, the identity of his family, and the identity of his slave master. Frederick Douglass is the first to unapologetically write an autobiography naming himself and his slave master, knowing full well that this would make him a marked man, knowing full well that the punishment for running away could be death, knowing full well the consequences. He did not hide his identity, as was the custom for most runaway Africans in America. Frederick Douglass is also one of the first black men to challenge the intellectual inferiority of African people with his own oratorical and autobiographical brilliance. Frederick Douglass nearly single-handedly destroyed the myth that Africans are inferior to white people through his oratorical and autobiographical brilliance, through the written word, through the pen. Frederick Douglass, a self-taught African, proved the entire global white power structure wrong on the issue of African intellectual inferiority. Frederick Douglass also challenged the photographers of his day because he was the most photographed American of the 19th century. I don't know if y'all know that. Frederick Douglass was more autographed than any president in the 19th century. He was more photographed than any president, any statesman, any congressman in the United States. More photographs of Frederick Douglass than any other personality of the 19th century, including the good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who would pick up the mantle of Frederick Douglass. But the difference between Douglass and the great Dr. King is that the great Dr. King was committed to nonviolence. Frederick Douglass was not. Frederick Douglass did not believe in nonviolence. He did not believe in nonviolence at all. Remember, Frederick Douglass earned his freedom by beating down his own slave master. Not only did he beat down the slave master, he literally beat down a slave master to whom he was sent to be broken. The slave master Covey. The slave master Covey was known on the eastern shore of Maryland of being able to break even the toughest slave. So he didn't beat down any slave master. He beat down the slave masters of slave masters, the white man who slave masters sent their Africans to have their spirits snatched. And Frederick Douglass beat him down and earned his freedom. Frederick Douglass became an ambassador to Haiti. And he did not like America's agenda in Haiti, so he quit his post as minister to Haiti. And the Haitian people loved Frederick Douglass so much. The Haitian people loved Frederick Douglass so much that they chose him to represent the Haitian people at the World's Fair in Chicago. The Haitian people loved Frederick Douglass so much that they chose him to represent the Haitian people at the World's Exposition in Chicago. Frederick Douglass worked with Harriet Tubman. He was a station master on the Underground Railroad. He worked with Martin Delany, co-published The North Star. He supported John Brown's raid, although he did not participate in it. And at one time, Frederick Douglass was committed to a mass exodus of Africans out of America. At one time, he did reconsider, but at one time, the great Frederick Douglass was committed to a mass exodus of Africans out of America. If you have not read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, and there are 3, if you have not read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, and there are 3, you should read them. His 4th of July speech, one of the greatest of all, the most unapologetically African political speech delivered on American soil. Hands down. Not even Dr. King could touch Douglass. Not even Dr. King could touch Douglass because of Frederick Douglass. He was not alone. There were others. Remember, he was a contemporary. He was a contemporary of the grandfathers of revolutionary Pan-Africanism. Frederick Douglass was a contemporary and often an adversary to the grandfathers of revolutionary Pan-Africanism, Henry Highland Garnett, who debated Frederick Douglass in Buffalo, New York, on whether they should arm the slaves for immediate rebellion or whether they should continue political strategies to bring about the end of slavery. He ran with Alexander Crummell, Pan-Africanist, who was the first black man to build an intellectual society for black men. He ran with Edward Wilmot Blyden, who came to America from the U.S. Virgin Islands to go to theological seminary school. He was not accepted, so he went to Liberia, ended up becoming Secretary of State. He ran with Frederick Douglass. Garnett ran with Douglass. Alexander Crummell ran with Douglass. Henry Highland Garnett ran with Douglass. So Frederick Douglass was surrounded by revolutionary Pan-Africanists. Read the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, 1845. You can read it in one day. You can read it in one day. One of the most revolutionary slave narratives ever written. Read My Bondage and My Freedom, Frederick Douglass. Read Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. Read some of the issues of the North Star paper and read some of the issues of the Frederick Douglass paper, which it became after he split with Martin Delany, grandfather of Pan-Africanism, also ran with Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass was surrounded by and influenced by the grandfathers of Pan-Africanism. I said Frederick Douglass was surrounded by and influenced by the grandfathers of revolutionary Pan-Africanism. With that being said, we want to get into the speech. Let me remind all my Mississippi Africans. I will see you in Jackson at the African Art Theater this Thursday. Doors open not in 72 hours, but 70 hours. I begin speaking in 72 hours. Jackson, Mississippi, Medgar Evers City, Fannie Lou Hamer State, Ida B. Wells State, Medgar Evers State. Thursday, February 17, God willing, the Prince of Pan-Africanism will be at the African Art Gallery in Jackson, Mississippi, 2 to 8. Shreveport, Louisiana, this Saturday, the 19th. Southern University, Shreveport campus, Jackson building. Panel discussion at 10. I speak at 11. I sign books at 1. Panel discussion at 10. I speak at 11. I sign books at 1. Southern University, Shreveport. Next week, Wednesday, February 23rd, Savannah, Georgia. The West Street YMCA, Savannah, Georgia, 2 to 8. And then the next day, Thursday, Jacksonville, Florida, at the Scottish Rite Cathedral. Jacksonville, Florida. If you need the flyer, you can text me. 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858. Philadelphia, it looks like I will be closing out Black History Month on Sunday, the 27th, here in my hometown of Philadelphia. Information coming soon for all my Pennsylvania Africans. It also looks like the Pennsylvania Black Parent Boot Camp training will be held in Philadelphia in March next month. From Pittsburgh to Chester, from Harrisburg to Coatesville, from Erie to Lancaster. That's right. From Willow Grove to Upland, the Black Parent Boot Camp for Pennsylvania parents will be held in Philadelphia next month. The information is coming. Let's get into the speech by the Honorable Frederick Douglass. Delivered on August the 3rd, Leo season, birthday of Pan-Africanist Edward Wilmot Blyden, delivered on August the 3rd, 1857. August the 3rd, 1857, 26 years after the assassination of the great Reverend Nat Turner. Douglass says, the general sentiment of mankind is that a man who will not fight for himself when he has the means of doing so is not worth being fought for by others. This is very relevant to Black America right now. Let me say it again. A man who will not fight for himself when he has the means of doing so is not worth being fought for by other people. Brothers and sisters, if Black people are not going to fight for ourselves, why do you want the government to do it? Why do you want white people to do it? Why do you want other people to fight for you? The George Floyd protests, only 1 in 5 protesters were Black. The George Floyd protests, only 1 in 5 protesters were Black. We have to fight for ourselves, brothers and sisters. We have to fight for ourselves. Nobody can save the African but the African. Frederick goes on to say, a man who does not value freedom for himself will never value it for other people. A man who does not freedom for himself will never value it for other people. A man who does not value freedom for himself will never value it for other people. The reason people don't want to fight for African Americans don't want to fight for themselves. We want everybody to feel sympathetic. We want the white man to roll over. No. If you value freedom, fight for it. Stop asking other people to sacrifice for you and you don't want to sacrifice for yourself. We ask black celebrities to sacrifice for us. We ask black celebrities to sacrifice for us, but we don't sacrifice for ourselves. Why would a black celebrity risk millions when you don't even risk hundreds of dollars? Why would a black celebrity risk billions when you don't even risk thousands? Stop asking people to do more for you than you are willing to do for yourself. We have a bad habit. We have a bad habit of, as African people, asking other people to do for us what we won't do for ourselves. Never ask another man to do more for you than you have done for yourself. Never do that. But black people in America are constantly asking other people to fight for us when we don't fight for ourselves. Cut it out. Nobody's going to sacrifice for you more than you sacrifice for yourself. He says a man who does not value freedom for himself will never value it for others or put himself to any inconvenience to gain it for others. Such a man, the world says, may lie down until he has sense enough to stand up. You hear that? Frederick Douglass says you should stay on the bottom until you become man and woman enough to work your way to the top, to fight your way to the top, to struggle your way to the top. That's right. You want to vote yourself to the top. You want to vote your way to the top. You want to march your way to the top. You want to pray your way to the top. Frederick Douglass said, you got to fight your way to the top. And until you are willing to fight, until the black man and woman of America are willing to fight your way to the top, you should stay on the bottom. Frederick Douglass had to fight his slave master. He had to risk death to get his freedom. He had to risk death to get his freedom. You don't want to risk nothing. You don't want to risk your reputation. You don't want to risk your home. You don't want to risk your job. You don't want to risk your retirement. What are you willing to sell for your freedom? What is the black man and woman of America willing to sell for your freedom? Because Frederick Douglass said, until you are willing to fight for that freedom, you should stay a slave. Let's continue. Frederick Douglass said, it is useless and cruel to put a man on his legs if the next moment his head is to be brought against a curbstone. It is useless and cruel to take a man who's down and stand him up. Because if he ain't ready to stand on his own, he gonna fall right back down and crash his head against the pavement. So Frederick Douglass is telling you, and he's talking to enslaved Africans. This speech is to enslaved Africans. This is Frederick Douglass, August 3rd, 1857, speaking to enslaved Africans, telling them that if you ain't man enough to fight for your freedom, you shouldn't get it. Did you hear that, black people? I hope you're listening. I hope Frederick Douglass, if you ain't man enough to fight for your freedom, you should not get your freedom. So let me ask you, black people. Let me ask the American African. Let me ask the continental African. Let me ask the Caribbean African. Let me ask the Central and South American, the Canadian, and the English African. Let me ask the Africans of Australia. Are you willing to fight for your freedom? Or are you waiting for it to be delivered on a silver platter? Are you willing to fight for your freedom? Or are you willing? Or do you want it delivered to you on a silver platter? Frederick Douglass says, a man of that type will never lay the world under any obligation to him. He will be a moral pauper, a drag on the wheels of society. And if he be too identified with a particular variety of the race, he will bring disgrace upon his own race and upon himself. I hope black men are listening to this. I want black men to hear me. Frederick Douglass is saying that if you ain't willing to fight for your freedom, shut up until you're ready to. Stop crying, stop complaining until you are ready to stand up and fight. He said, because if you are not willing to fight for your freedom, Frederick Douglass says you bring disgrace upon the entire race of African people for your cowardice. Frederick Douglass says you bring disgrace upon the entire race of African people for this, brothers and sisters. So let's continue. The world in which we live, very accommodating. Hold on. The world in which we live is very accommodating to all sorts of people. It will cooperate with them in any measure which they propose. It will help those who help themselves and will hinder those who hinder themselves. He says it is very polite and never offers its services unasked. Its favors to individuals are measured by an unerring principle. Respect those who respect themselves and despise those who despise themselves. It is not within the power of unaided human nature to persevere in pitying a people who are insensible to their own wrongs and indifferent to the attainment of his own rights. Okay, so Frederick Douglass said, respect those who respect themselves and despise those who despise themselves. He says it is not within the power of human nature to persevere in pitying a people who are insensible to their own wrongs and indifferent to the attainment of their own rights. He says those who want to be free must strike the blow themselves. Those who want to be free must strike the blow themselves. Those who want to be free must strike the blow themselves. He goes on. He says, Christianity teaches that a man shall provide for his own house. This covers the whole ground of nations as well as individuals. Nations no more than individuals can innocently be improvident. They should provide for all wants, mental, moral, and religious, and against all evils to which they are liable as nations. Frederick says, I have been branded an ingrate because I ventured to stand up on my own right and plead our cause as a black man rather than as a Garrisonian. Let me stop here for a minute. For my Instagram Sambos, and my Facebook Sambos, I know nobody by the name of Gideon. I definitely received no money from anyone by the name of Gideon. Okay? So I don't know what game you guys are playing. I don't know the man, never heard of the man, and definitely received no money from the man. Money for what? Okay? So let me continue. Who is this Gideon? Who are you? Who are you? So we have a whole army of I'm going to continue, family. I'm going to continue. I want to know who Gideon is. Can somebody tell me who Gideon is? Who is this idiot named Gideon who claims I owe him $500? $500 for what? I don't know anybody named of Gideon. But I'm not going to call him Gideon anymore. I'm going to call him Jackass. And all of you are jackasses. Let me get some of these people out of here. 1 second. I'm going to get right on back. All right. I'm just going to stay focused on the message. I'm just going to stay focused on the message, brothers and sisters. All right. Your humble speaker has been branded as an ingrate because he has ventured to stand up on his own right and plead his cause as a black man rather than as a Garrisonian. Let me tell you what happened between Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, the white man who founded the American Anti-Slavery Society. When he discovered Frederick Douglass up in New England, and he hired Frederick Douglass to speak for the American Anti-Slavery Society, he never wanted Frederick Douglass to articulate his own intellectual positions on abolition. He wanted Frederick Douglass to simply be his flunky. And when Frederick Douglass said, listen, I'm not here to be your flunky. I have my own speech, my own thoughts. I have my own ideas. I have my own plans. And when Frederick Douglass told William Lloyd Garrison that you are not going to tell me how to talk, you are not going to control me politically, you're not going to control me in the media. I didn't fight one slave master to become slave to another slave master. William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass fell out, brothers and sisters. There's a message in this. It is important for those of us who believe in African independence to never let a person of another race, never let a person of another race try to dictate your manhood or your womanhood. Never let a person of another race try to tell you what to do or try to control your freedom of speech and your political activity. See, this is the problem. This is the problem with Urban League, NAACP, other black organizations who are funded outside the community. But because they are funded outside the community, they can't tell the truth. They cannot speak the truth. They cannot articulate the black struggle in the way that they want to because they are financed by enemies of the race, brothers and sisters. You understand me? You have to be economically independent if you're going to fight for black people. The problem with the Urban League, the problem with the NAACP, to some extent, the problem with the National Action Network, respectfully, the problem with the Rainbow Coalition, Jesse Jackson, respectfully, the NAACP, the Urban League, the National Action Network, the Rainbow Coalition, no disrespect to none of them, but they are all funded by non-African entities. They are all funded by non-African entities. You'll never see Al Sharpton, respectfully. You'll never see Al Sharpton fight for better schools because Al Sharpton's organization gets money from one of the teachers' unions. You'll never see Jesse Jackson fight certain issues because he gets funded by white people who have a vested interest in those issues, the NAACP, the Urban League, the same situation, brothers and sisters. No disrespect, but if you want to be a true advocate for African people, if you want to be a true advocate for African people, you have to be financially independent. You can't name me one person who was not financially independent, who did anything serious for African people. You can't name me one. You can't name me one. You cannot be financed by one group of people and claim to be a fighter for another. This is one of the reasons black politicians can never be leaders in the community, because their paycheck comes from local government. Their paycheck comes from state government. Their paycheck comes from federal government. You cannot be for one group being financed by another group. You can't. You can't. Let's continue. Frederick Douglass says, the whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions made have been born of struggle. I hope y'all listening to this. All concessions made have been born of struggle. All concessions made have been born of struggle. Black people want to march your way out of this. You want to vote your way out of this. You want to pray your way out of this. You want to YouTube your way out of this. We want a convenient way of achieving equality. Black people want a convenient way of achieving justice. Black people want a convenient way to get liberation. There is no convenient way. Dr. King gave his life for this. Medgar Evers gave his life for this. Fred Hampton gave his life for this. Little Bobby Hutton gave his life for this. Al Prentice Bunchy Carter gave his life for this. John Huggins gave his life for this. Johnny Cochran gave his life for this. Assata Shakur had to live her life elsewhere for this. Mumia Abu-Jamal spent his life in prison for this. H. Rap Brown spent his life in prison for this. There must be struggle. Political struggle, economic struggle, social struggle, cultural struggle, intellectual struggle. Frederick Douglass tells you right here, August the 3rd, 1857, all concessions are born of struggle. Why can't black people get this through your head? Brian Flores in the NFL right now. Brian Flores in the NFL right now. Brian Flores in the NFL right now. He's suing 3 teams in the NFL for lack of black coaches. Now, let me say something. Brian Flores. Brian Flores. Do not make this an issue of coaching diversity. Make it an issue of a lack of black coaches. Do not use the word diversity. Big mistake we make is we use the word diversity. We fail to understand that any time we use the word diversity, we're not fighting for black people. We're fighting for people of color. Anytime we use the word diversity, we're not fighting for black people any longer. We're fighting for people of color. If you want the issue to stay focused on black people, then don't use the word diversity. Use the word black. Latinos don't use the word diversity. They use the word Latino. Arabs don't use the word diversity. They use the word Arab. If we want inclusion for Africans, say inclusion. You want more black coaches, say black coaches. Do not say diversity, because they will go and hire a bunch of minority coaches and none of them will be black. They will go and hire a bunch of minority coaches and none of them will be black. We have to make sure we are being specific. Don't go into the school board meeting and say we need to diversify the teachers in Shreveport, Louisiana. Don't say we need to diversify the teachers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Don't say we need to diversify the teachers in Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. Don't say we want to diversify. Say we need equity for black teachers. Use the word equity or use the word equality. Don't use the word diversity. I said use the word equity or use the word equity or equality, not diversity. Equity for Africans, equity for blacks. Don't use diversity. Diversity means you're fighting for everybody again. Diversity means you are fighting for everybody again. We're not fighting for everybody. We're fighting for Africans. Let every group fight for themselves. We have come to a point in our struggle in America. I want Jesse Jackson to hear me. I want Al Sharpton to hear me. I want the NAACP to hear me. I want the Urban League to hear me. I want the Divine Nine to hear me. I want all black community-based organizations to hear me. The day of fighting for all non-white people is over. We respect them. We wish them well, but they have not kept up their end of the bargain. Not one of those groups has fought effectively and stringently for African people. So we are no longer speaking for no one but ourselves. Equity for Africans, equality for Africans. We're not concerned about diversity. We're concerned about equity for black people. We are not concerned about diversity. We are concerned about equity for Africans. We are not concerned about diversity. We are concerned about equity for African people. Let us understand, understand, overstand. Let us understand, understand, and overstand. This is about African people. Nobody has kept up their end of the bargain when it comes to being diverse. Diversity is a distraction from cultural imperialism. The word diversity is a distraction for politically uneducated black people who actually think there's other groups who care about you as much as they care about themselves. Diversity is a distraction for politically uneducated Africans who think other groups care about you as much as they care about themselves. Diversity is a distraction for politically uneducated Africans who think other groups care about us as much as they care about themselves. Brian Flores, don't make this about diversity. I don't care about a diverse NFL. 70% of the players are black. 70% of the players are black. What the hell am I crying about diversity when 70% of the people who are slave laboring for the NFL are blacks? Why do I care about diversity if 70% of the people slave laboring in the NFL look like me? I don't care about diversity. I care about equity. Equity means what? Equity means if 70% of the players are black, 70% of the coaches should be black. If 70% of the players are black, 70% of the coaches are black. The NFL is ran like a slave plantation. The NBA is ran like a slave plantation. The NFL is ran like a slave plantation. The NBA is ran like a slave plantation. LeBron James, I love you, my brother. LeBron James, I love you, my brother. You came from high school, no college, no training, went straight to the league, kept your nose clean, never sold out, married a black woman. You love your black children. You are a role model for black boys and black men when it comes to integrity and character. LeBron James, you are a role model for young black men when it comes to integrity and character. 18 years old, you came into this league, took it by storm, With all your celebrity, you never got caught up in a single scandal. I salute you, LeBron James, as a role model for young black men as far as character and integrity are concerned. But for political activism, LeBron James, you are not a role model. I want to be clear. I respect my brother LeBron James. He is a role model for young black men relative to character and integrity. He is not a role model when it comes to political activism. LeBron James has been in the league almost 20 years. And we only have one black majority owner of an NFL team. My brother, you have not done any real activism for professional sports. When the Milwaukee Bucks wanted to protest, you didn't want to protest because you wanted to get another ring. Your ring was more important to black people. Like I said, character and integrity, hands down. Character and integrity, hands down. I will show young black boys at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy that LeBron James is an example of character and integrity. But when we talking about the freedom struggle, my brother, hell no. You are not. You are not. No, sir. No, sir. You have nothing in common with Colin Kaepernick. You have nothing in common with the brothers who raised the black fist. You have nothing in common with Muhammad Ali. LeBron James, you are not on that list. You are not on that Mount Rushmore. You might be on the Mount Rushmore of black athletic character and integrity. You might be on the Mount Rushmore of black NBA players. You are not on the Mount Rushmore of black athlete activists. That is not you. I just want to clear the record. Understand, overstand, and understand. I bite my tongue for no one. Understand, understand, and overstand. I bite my tongue for no one. Now, I don't know why y'all swinging from Gideon's nutsack, but I'm going to continue with my message. We got a bunch of brothers on here swinging from somebody named Gideon's nutsack. It's making me sick in my stomach. We got a beta male. We have a beta male beauty party going on my Instagram. We got a beta male beauty party going on my Instagram. A whole bunch of beta male swinging from Gideon's nuts. Gideon, I don't know who you are, my brother. I don't know who you are, but that's looking real beta. That's looking real tender. Instagram is looking real tender right now. Y'all need to get off Gideon's nutsack. Please get off that man's nutsack. Go find you a woman or something. I can't take it no more. Get off Gideon's nutsack. Let me get back. Forgive me, Facebook. You know, Instagram is the hood, and we got some ball swingers on Instagram. Let me refocus. We're reading Frederick Douglass's speech. Let me come back. But the point is, we got to fight for us. Frederick Douglass is saying we got to fight for us. Let me continue. Frederick Douglass says, the whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions made are born of a struggle. Frederick also says the conflict has been exciting, agitating, all-absorbing, and for the time being, putting all other struggles to silence. It must do this or it does nothing. Let me repeat that. Frederick Douglass says the conflict for black liberation must be exciting, it must be agitating, it must be all-absorbing, and it must put all other issues to silence. Now, let me ask y'all a question. Stay focused. We are having re-Africanization political science class right now. We are having re-Africanization political science class. Can I ask y'all a question? The current black struggle in America for justice, for equality, for liberation. The current struggle in black America against police genocide, mass incarceration, miseducation, economic apartheid. Would you say yes or no that our current struggle for liberation is exciting, agitating, all-absorbing, and is it putting every other issue to rest in the public eye and in the public ear? Yes or no? Yes or no? According to Frederick Douglass's standard, I'm asking you a question right now. I'm asking you a question right now. Our struggle for equality, justice, freedom, is it agitating? Is it all absorbing? Is it exciting? And is it outranking every other struggle in America? What is your answer? What is your answer? The answer is no. The answer is no. The rainbow struggle is more exciting, agitating, all absorbing than the black struggle. The immigrant issue is more exciting, agitating, and all absorbing than the black struggle. That's right. Think about it. The feminist struggle is more exciting, more agitating, and more all-absorbing than the black struggle. Frederick Douglass said, until you make your struggle the number one issue in America, you never get free. You will never get free. You will never get free. That's right. What if Black America would have stormed the Super Bowl halftime show last night? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. What if we would have all wore shirts with the names of all of the police murder victims of our race? What if we would have dressed in all black? Breonna Taylor on some shirts. Amir Locke on some shirts. Ahmaud Arbery on some shirts. Tamir Rice on some shirts. Sandra Bland on some shirts. Philando Castile on some shirts. Trayvon. What if we would have stormed the Super Bowl halftime show last night? Yes, we would have been in jail. Oh, we would have certainly been in jail. We may have even started a social unrest. We would have got locked up. We probably would have got charged. We would have definitely probably started a social unrest. But guess what would have happened? Every corporation who was advertising during the Super Bowl, and those Super Bowl commercials cost like $10 million a piece. Those Super Bowl commercials cost about $10 million a piece. So could you imagine if we would have stormed that arena at halftime? All them commercials would have got wiped off. The Super Bowl would not have been able to finish. For the first time in American history, the Super Bowl would not have been able to finish. Guess what would have happened? Police genocide would have been forced on the public conversation in every country, every radio. Right now, everybody will be talking about the Super Bowl protests against police genocide. Imagine if we would have done that. Imagine if we would have done that. We not serious. No disrespect to Dr. Dre. No disrespect to Snoop Dogg. No disrespect to 50 Cent. No disrespect to Mary J. Blige. No disrespect to Kendrick Lamar. It's not about hating on them. They would have understood, or they would have got ran over. They would have understood. Don't know entertainment come before black liberation. Don't know making money come before black liberation. Frederick Douglass tells you right here. He tells you the conflict must be exciting, agitating, all absorbing. It must put everything else to rest, or it is no struggle. Frederick Douglass said, it does this, or it does nothing. Are y'all listening to this man? Are y'all listening to the greatest black leader in American history right now? Did you hear what Frederick Douglass just said? You either do it all the way or don't do it at all. Frederick Douglass said, if you ain't making your issue the main issue in America, it's a waste of time. You ain't serious and nobody's going to take you serious. You ain't serious and nobody's going to take you serious. That's what Frederick Douglass is saying. For those of you still swinging from Gideon's nutsack, for those of you still swinging from Gideon's nutsack, I invite you to the DR.UMAR Ifatunde Alpha Male Academy for weak, broke down beta males who can't do nothing else but swing from the sack of another black man. Let me stay focused. Let me stay focused. He said, I owe $1 trillion. Lord have mercy. Let's keep going. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without the thunder and the lightning. You want the ocean without the roar of the water. Brothers and sisters, Frederick Douglass is basically calling blacks in America a bunch of fake woke cowards. Frederick Douglass is basically calling us right now on his 204th birthday. On his 204th birthday, February 14th, 1818, Frederick Douglass is calling black America a bunch of cowards. How you talking about you want justice and you ain't forcing your issue on public conversation? How you talking about you want justice and you ain't sacrificing nothing to be heard? How you talking about you want justice and all of your civil rights groups are funded by the same people? All of your civil rights groups are funded by the same people you have to fight. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Let's continue. Frederick says, this struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. The NFL ain't giving up nothing unless you take it. The NBA ain't giving up nothing unless you take it. Joe Biden ain't giving up nothing unless you take it. Kamala Harris ain't giving up nothing unless you take it. The black bourgeoisie ain't giving up nothing unless you take it. The black megachurch ain't giving up nothing unless you take it. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing. Nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what black people will quietly submit to, and you have found the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon us. He preaching right now. The Honorable Frederick Douglass is preaching right now. The Honorable Frederick Douglass, let me read it again. Listen to this. Find out what black people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon us. Did y'all hear that? Frederick Douglass said, you are quietly submitting to police genocide. Frederick Douglass says you are quietly submitting to miseducation. Frederick Douglass says you are quietly submitting to mass incarceration. Frederick Douglass says you are quietly submitting to gentrification. You are quietly submitting to economic castration. Greatest speech right here. I love this speech more than the 4th of July speech. I love this speech more than the Honorable Frederick Douglass's 4th of July speech. He continues. He continues. These wrongs will continue. This is the part y'all don't want to hear. Y'all ready? Listen to this sentence. Listen to this sentence from Frederick Douglass. These wrongs will continue until they are resisted with words, with blows, or with both. Y'all don't hear me though. Y'all don't hear me though. Y'all don't hear me though. Frederick Douglass says, these wrongs will continue until they are resisted with words or blows or both. Uh-oh. You got to fight your way out of this. You got to fight your way out of this. You got to fight your way out of this. And then he says, the limits of your tyrants is prescribed by the endurance of those they oppress. The limits of white supremacy, the limits of police genocide, the limits of NFL discrimination, the limits of NBA discrimination, the limits of miseducation, the limits of mass incarceration is prescribed. Is prescribed by the endurance of those who suffer from them. We decide if the NFL is going to have more black coaches. We decide if the NBA is going to have more black coaches. We decide if Joe Biden is going to start looking out for black folks. We decide if the black megachurch is going to start fighting for black people. And you know how we decide? Do you know how we decide? We decide by any means necessary. By any means necessary. By any means necessary. This is the by any means necessary speech. Malcolm X wasn't even born yet. This is the by any means necessary speech. Malcolm X wasn't even born yet. This is the by any means necessary speech. Malcolm X wasn't even born. This is August 3rd, 1857. No Struggle, No Progress by Frederick Douglass. I am reading the August the 3rd, 1857, No Struggle, No Progress speech by the Honorable Frederick Douglass. He continues. Negroes will be hunted in the North. You will be flogged at the South as long as you submit to these devilish outrages and make no resistance, either moral or physical. I'm going to read it again. Did y'all hear what I just said? Let me say it again. Frederick Douglass said that the mass incarceration of black folks right now. Frederick Douglass said the gentrification of black folks right now. Frederick Douglass said the mass miseducation. He just said the economic apartheid of black folks is going to keep on going. It's going to keep on going until what? Listen to what he says. You will continue to be hunted. You will continue to be whipped as long as you what? Submit to the devilish outrages and make no resistance. Frederick says it will continue until you resist and you make an outrage. Frederick Douglass is giving us the strategy, brothers and sisters. Frederick Douglass is giving us the strategy right now. Frederick Douglass is giving us the strategy. You cannot submit and you must make an outrage. We are submitting and we are not making an outrage. Elijah Muhammad wasn't even born yet, my brother. No disrespect. Elijah Muhammad wasn't even born yet, my brother. No disrespect. We must make an outrage and we must submit. We must make an outrage and we must submit. We cannot submit. Listen to this part. Let's keep on going. Frederick Douglass says, men may not get all you pay for, but you will pay for everything you get. You may not get all you pay for, but you will pay for whatever you get. And if we ever get free, listen to this. Listen to this. Frederick says, if we ever get free from the oppression and wrong heaped against us, we must pay for that removal. If we ever get free from the oppression and wrong heaped against us, we must pay for that removal. He says we must do this by labor. That means work, political work, agitation and struggle, political work, agitation and struggle on his 204th birthday of the Honorable Frederick Douglass. He said, you must labor. Frederick Douglass said, you must labor if you want to be free. Not sit around making YouTube videos, not running to Africa every 5 minutes without doing nothing while you get to Africa except take pictures and vacation. You go to Africa to vacation. We're supposed to go to Africa for organization. We go to Africa to vacation. We're supposed to go to Africa for political organization. We go to Africa to vacation. We're supposed to go to Africa for organization. It's okay to look at the pyramids. It's okay to study the great culture and history of our ancestors. That's important. But if you don't organize nothing when you go to Africa, and all you doing is taking pictures and studying history, you're not participating in the struggle. We have to fight labor. And who is the divinity of labor? Ogun. Ogun is the father of labor. Ogun is the father of labor and struggle. He says, we must do this by labor. We must do this by suffering. We must do this by sacrifice. And if need be, by our lives. I'm going to say this again, because this is what black folks don't want to hear right now. I'm going to say it again. This is what black folks don't want to hear right now. Frederick Douglass said, if you want to get free, you will have to labor. You will have to suffer. You will have to sacrifice. And you may have to give your life. Let me say it again. Lord have mercy. You will have to labor. You will have to suffer. You will have to sacrifice. And you may have to give your life. Let me say it one more time. You will have to labor. You will have to suffer. You will have to sacrifice. And you may have to give your life. No, Omalade, Ogun is not the god of thunder. Shango is the god of thunder. You will have to labor. You will have to suffer. You will have to sacrifice. And you may have to give your life. Somebody go ask Benjamin Crump. Go ask Al Sharpton. Go ask the Urban League. Go ask the NAACP. Go ask the Black Megachurch. Go ask Creflo Dollar and TD Jakes. Go ask them, how much have you labored? How much have you suffered? How much have you sacrificed? And have you ever had to put your life on the line for the liberation of Africans? These are the words of the immortal Frederick Douglass. Let's continue. He says, every mother who plunges a knife into the bosom of her infant to save it from the hell of Christian slavery should be held and honored. Woo! Y'all not ready for me now. Y'all not ready for Frederick Douglass. Oh, no. Y'all not ready for Frederick Douglass. I would dare say that the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, greatest leader of the 20th century, I would dare say that the most honorable Marcus Garvey, greatest leader of the 20th century, never gave a speech as powerful as the greatest leader of the 19th century, Frederick Douglass. Listen to this. Listen to this. But let me give you the background. Let me give you the background. This is a book on the greatest speeches given. Excuse-moi. Brothers and sisters, the work never ends. I'm not getting rid of my chair. I love this chair. This chair has been with me for almost 20 years. I've been sitting in this chair before y'all knew me. I was sitting in this chair when I became a school psychologist. I was sitting in this chair when I got my doctorate. I was sitting in this chair when I took over the conscious community. I was sitting in this chair when I became kingkongconsciousness. I'm not giving up this chair until the chair gives up on me. I'm not giving up on this chair until this chair gives up on me. I'm not giving up this chair until this chair gives up on me. It is sacred. See, there's certain things we have to understand. It's not about money all the time. And it's not about the look. You got to get out of that. How are you going to be an activist for African liberation and you worrying about how things look? You're not sitting in the chair. I'm sitting in the chair. This is my throne. This chair is for the Prince of Pan-Africanism. Stop worrying about my chair. Now, the chair at the school will be nice because it's a school. It's a place of business. I want to be professional. But when I'm getting my think tank on, when I'm strategizing, when I'm organizing, when I'm philosophizing, let me sit in my chair. Let us continue. And if you don't think this chair is okay, if you don't think this chair is okay, if you don't think this chair is okay, ask your queen to come take a sit on my lap and see if she liked the chair. Have your queen, you beta male. Have your queen, you beta male. Come have a sit on Dr. Papa's lap on this chair. She will love this chair. Your queen will love the Prince of Pan-Africanism chair. But let us refocus. Let us refocus. Frederick Douglass. Let us refocus. Let us refocus. All right. Frederick Douglass said we must do this by labor, by suffering, by sacrifice, and by our lives. In January of 1856, the Garner family, enslaved by Archibald Gaines of Kentucky, escaped to Cincinnati. They were pursued and attacked. Before the group was captured, Margaret Garner, a black woman, Margaret Garner, a black woman, Margaret Garner, a black woman, killed one of her children and severely wounded two others to save them all from slavery by death. Did y'all hear what I just said? Did y'all hear what I just said? Did y'all hear what I just said? A black woman took the life of her child while being pursued by the slave trackers. She took the life of one of her children to prevent them from going back into slavery. So Frederick Douglass is speaking about her. He says every mother like Margaret Garner who plunged a knife into the infant to save it from the hell of Christian slavery should be held and honored. Think about that, brothers and sisters. She killed her baby. She took the life of her own child in Cincinnati, Ohio. Shout out to my Cincinnati Africans. She took the life of her own child in Cincinnati in 1857 because they was going to take her and her baby back into slavery. And she felt it was better to take the life of her child than to let her child grow up a slave. Are y'all listening to this? Are y'all listening to this? Are y'all listening to this, brothers and sisters? She took the life of her child rather than let her child grow up into slavery. Every mother who plunges a knife into the bosom of her infant to save it from the Christian hell should be held and honored. Every fugitive from slavery who prefers to perish in a river made red by his own blood than to submit to the hellhounds who were hunting and shooting him should be esteemed as a glorious martyr. Did y'all hear that? You had black folks who drowned in the river. You had black folks who drowned themselves in the river rather than go back into slavery. Are y'all familiar with Igbo landing? Who is familiar with Igbo landing? Who is familiar with Igbo landing, where a group of enslaved Africans from Nigeria, a group of enslaved Africans from Nigeria, a group of enslaved Africans from Nigeria was brought to Georgia. And as soon as they disembarked from the ship, they turned right around and walked right back into the water with their slave chains firmly in place, and they drowned themselves. They drowned themselves. It's called Igbo landing. All Georgia Africans, look up Igbo landing right now. IGBO, named after the great Igbo people of Nigeria. These brothers and sisters said, I will not be a slave. They turned around, walked back into the water, and took their own lives by drowning rather than be a slave. Took their own lives by drowning rather than be a slave. And you want to keep comparing our struggle to other people? And you want to keep comparing our struggle to other people? And you want to keep comparing our struggle to other people. This woman killed her baby so it didn't have to be a slave. And you up here talking about the black struggle is equal to the rainbow struggle. The black struggle is equal to the immigrant struggle. The black struggle is equal to the Latino struggle, the Arab struggle, the Asian struggle. Are you out of your minds? Are you out of your mind? You can't compare that. A black mother killing her child so she don't have to endure the abuses of slavery. And you're up here comparing what we've been through with other people. Come on now. Come on now. Come on, y'all. Let's continue. Frederick says, in Mechanicsburg, Ohio, the other day, a fugitive who taught the slave catchers from Kentucky that it was safer to arrest the white man than to arrest him did a most excellent service to the cause. In Christiana, Pennsylvania, Parker and his noble band of 15 defended themselves from the slave kidnappers with prayers and pistols. They're entitled to the honor of making the first successful resistance to the Fugitive Slave Bill. But for that resistance and the rescue of Jerry and Shadrach, the manhunters would have hunted our hills and valleys with the same freedom from which they now hunt their own dismal swamps. There was an important lesson in the conduct of that noble crewman in New York the other day. Supposing that the American Christians were about to enslave him, betook him to the masthead and with a knife said he would cut his own throat before he would be a slave. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? In New York, 1857, in New York, a black man put a knife to his throat. A black man put a knife to his throat and said, I would rather cut my throat than go back into slavery. I would rather cut my throat than go back into slavery. He said, I would rather cut my throat than go back into slavery. But you will honor Thomas Jefferson, who owned hundreds. You will honor George Washington, who owned hundreds. You will honor Benjamin Franklin, who was a slave master. You will honor the Declaration of Independence, and you will honor the U.S. Constitution, which was adopted and written by slave-owning white supremacists. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Let's continue. Frederick said, Joseph Senku on the Amistad. Frederick Douglass now speaks of Joseph Senku on the Amistad. Frederick Douglass now speaks of Joseph Senku on the Amistad. He said he did what should make his name dear to us. He bore nature's burning protests against slavery. Madison Washington, who struck down his oppressor on the deck of the Creole ship, is more worthy to be remembered than the colored man who shot Pitcairn at Bunker Hill. Brothers and sisters, Frederick Douglass, and I'm going to close with this. He says, all that I contend for is this, that the slaves of the West Indies did fight for their freedom, and that the fact of their discontent was known in England, and that it assisted in bringing about that state of public opinion which finally resulted in their emancipation. And if this be true, we too must fight. Peace and Pan-Africanism, brothers and sisters.